Well, welcome everybody. We're excited that you're here this morning. And I just wanted to start this nonprofit success lab, which is a monthly product from Idaho Partners for Good, with with something I heard yesterday. So I listened to Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman, and yesterday he had Simon Sinek on, and it was really a good podcast. But there was one thing in particular for this moment in time that I wanted to share as we go into this workshop. And it's really about optimism. And so that word is really, really important at this time in our lives, locally as internationally and nationally. And optimism is not naive, but it is the undying belief that the future is bright. So, as an optimistic leader, you can say, look, these are probably some of the most difficult times that we've ever been in. There's lots of uncertainty. We don't know what will happen, neither do we know how long it's going to take for us to get through this. But one thing is for sure, that if we take care of each other, if we work together, if we come through this together, we'll be a whole lot stronger on the other side. So I'm Blossom Pumahala Johnston, and I have the great pleasure of leading a team of experienced leaders. Connie's one of them, Brian is another. They have deep expertise in pretty much anything that a nonprofit could need. Idaho Partners for Good, our mission and vision. So we are reinventing how people give, share their expertise, and do greater good together. The reason we do that is to develop stronger, healthier, and better equipped nonprofits so that they can do more of what they do best. So today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Connie Miller. And Connie, if you'd like to advance the slides a couple, that'd be awesome. There's our mission and vision. And then the next slide. Today we will hear from Connie Miller. She is one of our premier consultants. She has a deep expertise in a lot of areas. She is a retired Horizon Credit Union CEO. She has deep background in board governance. And so you'll hear more from her today on building trust, support, and accountability between the board and the CEO. So without further ado, Connie, take it away.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And I just want to say thank you for investing in you. This world needs more leaders that are really carving out time to just learn and think about how they can be more effective in their role. So this is one of my favorite topics because not only does it just really help nonprofits and their leadership, but so many things we're going to talk about today are just life. They're how to just show up as a more credible human and a more impactful human. So I'm super excited to share some of these topics. The first thing I wanted to do was just really talk about what is just the one thing you really hope that you would get from this time together today. And if it's something we aren't going to talk about, we certainly will be bringing that to you in the future. So if you could just come off mute and just chime in with one or two or three things that you would really just love to make sure that we covered today.
Hi, Connie, I'll go first.
Thank you.
More board engagement.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I'll go after Maggie. I would like to know suggestions on how to it goes along how to communicate better with the board. Like where do you give them agendas? Do you email? Do you upload? Do you know?
Excellent.
Hi, Connie. I'm Jennifer Neal, and I am the board chair of a small nonprofit here. And so what I'd like to learn exactly is opposite is how do I get to know my CEO better my executive director better? And how do I help her develop trust in me?
Excellent.
I'm Sherry Smith, and I'm here for all the nuggets of wisdom.
Thanks, Sherry.
I'm Allison with Girls on the Run, and I second that for what Sherry said.
Okay, all right. Any other final needs that you have?
Obviously, since
Oh, make a big
That's cool.
Seems interesting.
this is Maddie, Idaho Hispanic Foundation, and I would like to hear a little bit about inspiring fundraising or fund development.
Okay.
Hi, Connie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi,
Thank you.
so I'm Bryce Morrison. I'm actually a CPA focusing on nonprofit tax. I just recently started my own firm. So I guess what I'm looking for is how, like, I guess what maybe boards and the CEO are looking for in their CPA, how I can better service boards and better work with the nonprofit organizations and how we can work together, how I can bring value to them.
Okay, great.
And we
And I
have
love
a comment from the chat. Cornelia Sprung is saying maybe some board meeting tools and tips.
Okay. All right, this gives me some ideas of some things that are top of mind for you. So some of the things we'll talk about today, some others we'll be able to at least give you some tips on. So thank you for sharing that. So the very first thing that I just think is really important anytime we start talking about, so our goal today is really talk about how do we enhance that relationship between a board chair and a CEO, and how do we build accountability and trust in the boardroom. So for example, even if we're talking about providing resources to nonprofits in the form of tax, how do we still make sure we're all showing up where we're building this unity with this organization? So I just love this definition and quote about unity, which is if we're in unison with each other, we have just a lot more success. When there's teamwork and collaboration, amazing things happen. And so oftentimes it's super important to invest in what does unity look like with our staff and our board all working together. In the end, we want to be credible when we show up to lead our nonprofits. Credibility and trust is critical. What is so important is to understand that the world sees you from the outside and they start forming opinions about you as a nonprofit organization. And this flows to everything from recruiting volunteers, recruiting donors. People want to invest in organizations that are doing things well and doing it right. And they certainly want to invest in organizations where they feel like there's some unity and trust among the leaders. So there's a reason why it's so important that we invest in what does this level of trust and accountability look like in organizations. So when we think about the organization, who holds the executive director accountable for meeting their goals? If we just think about that, who do you, in the end, it is the board. The board is the only person that's holding the president or the executive director accountable to meet their goals, make sure that they are following the strategic direction of the board. What's important also is we often talk about this, is who is accountable to the board to hold themselves accountable to each other. And it's not just showing up in a board meeting and going through the agenda and approving the finance report and the minutes from last meeting, but there's this other whole incredible dynamic and important work that the board needs to do. And they need to be accountable to each other. So oftentimes I will get a call or I will talk to a particular board member that talks about some challenges that they have within their board. And they want someone to come fix it for them. They don't know how to lean in and have courageous conversations, or even how do I even bring this up in a board meeting if we have some challenges. And so what's super important here is that the board have this discussion about we are accountable to each other to make sure that we are unified, that we are communicating well, that if we have differences of opinion, which is not uncommon when you take a group of volunteers that are recruited from all walks of life, all different levels of experience, and many ideas about how to approach things, you're going to have differences of opinion. And so the board needs to stay very committed that you are accountable to each other. And so one of the best things, I just had a conversation, for example, with a nonprofit this morning. We were talking about how we coach the board when there's occasional side conversations. How do we coach them that would be a really good thing to bring up in the next board meeting? And so I just want to set the tone that it is so important if you serve on the board that you build a culture where your board members are accountable to each other and they hold each other accountable. So oftentimes when I talk to CEOs and boards, there's always this need for board clarity, role clarity. What is my role? And oftentimes when there is challenges, it's because one of these roles steps across into another role. So the role of the board is to stay very strategic and to be very what and why as a general rule. There is boards that are very strong working boards that actually roll up their sleeves and go in and do amazing work. And so sometimes there is a crossover, but it is very important that the board at least is making sure that they're coming up with the why and the what, and that is the space they stay in. If they want to volunteer and fill the need with some of the other things under the management role, they are welcome to do that, and it works in many boards. What is important is, as a general rule, if you are an advisory board, and you come and you are setting the direction for the organization, that you aren't getting in trying to micromanage. If you have an executive director or president or a CEO, that you're not trying to micromanage every little step. It will be very frustrating to the executive director, and they know their team best. They know their bandwidth, they know their scheduling, they know so much more detail about how they're going to accomplish this than they're working the puzzle pieces together. So I just love this little quick visual about, let's make sure as a board that we're staying very much in tune to setting the direction of the organization, making sure that we are supporting how we're going to get the resources to do that. And then we let the management do their great work together. The board typically has one person that they supervise and that they're responsible for, and that's the executive director. And then the executive director is responsible to manage the team. And of course, lots of boards have some gray areas here because of either how you were created, how small you are. So there is always, I always say, if you've seen one board, you've seen one board, but there is some really good best practices and promising practices that we can use in managing boards. This is my favorite visual because it really simplifies the role of the board and where our team needs to be spending their time. And I call it the waterline approach because what's so important is the board stay above the waterline, that their job is to float along the waterline and just make sure that they aren't drowning down in the details. And so they're very visionary. They're looking and asking for information about trends and planning. That's the space they live in. And then the staff and all of those kind of get where they are dealing with all the staffing and the day-to-day finances and the details and events and all of that. So what's important is that the board is always stopping to think, are they drowning below or not? And if they are, what is causing that? Is it an intentional decision? Is it have a good core purpose to how your board is set up? So just kind of keep that in mind and make sure that we understand role clarity can really set a board up for success. So one of the things that's really critical is to understand conversational capacity. And one of the things that I see often is this fear of leaning in and improving our conversational capacity. So Craig Weber has written a lot about how to really elevate conversational capacity. I love his book on this. And so he is all about the most important thing we need to do is to increase our conversation in a very constructive, learning focused environment, especially about difficult subjects in challenging circumstances and across tough boundaries. So creating a culture from your board, and board engagement involves, when people use the word board engagement, it involves a lot of things. It involves, are they showing up at events? It involves, are they doing donor visits? But also, are they speaking up in the boardroom? So if we look at how conversational capacity can be increased, it's important to understand the different personality types and approaches that we bring to conversations. So on the left, we have, I call them the minimum folks. These are the quiet folks. These are the people that actually internally, they often will do the whatever, just tell me what you need me to do. They will dismiss speaking up without an eagerness to learn, because they can be introverts, they can be afraid that what they say might not be received well. And it's just their general style with handling, as I said, difficult conversations, challenging times, all of that. So that's the one spectrum. The opposite spectrum is those that show up. These are typically the people that will speak up often. They usually have an opinion about everything, and they'll actually even argue just to win the argument sometimes, not even argue about being right. So these are two extremes. And our goal is that we help everyone get to the sweet spot. And the way we do that is we very first focus on us, and we try to figure out where we are on this scale. And then the second piece is I'll give you some tips on how we help each of these people and get there. But your goal as a board is that you land everyone in the sweet spot. And even as a team, as a staff person, we need to make sure that we are showing up in the sweet spot as well. So the one things that we can do is we teach the minimum. I call these the shutdown people. In other words, they typically shut down when times get a little bit tough, or there's some challenging things being discussed. People with high positivity and harmony will tend to be in this category. And then the opposite is these are your very confident, sometimes can be dominant in the win, and I call it the heat up category. So what we do is we teach the minimum folks that we need to give them opportunities where they can be candid, and we need to encourage courage. Courage is a trait that is incredibly valuable in the boardroom and also in anything to do with board and CEO relationships, but we need to kind of give them opportunities. And then the opposite of that is we need to teach those that do speak up the most often to get more curious about their opinions and to kind of find some humility in it all. So these are, and there's ways we go about this, which is to really try to get the folks to take a position if they are the minimum quiet people. And then the opposite is we have to teach the others to kind of be more curious. And sometimes we do that by pulling from other people in the room so that we can get everyone to the sweet spot. So sorry, some of the slides, the formatting is a little off. This is the difference between some of the format that I have versus where the slides are loaded. But I'll still walk you through this. So the minimum folks, this is where as a board chair, we go around the room and we ask everyone their thoughts. And we don't have to do this on every single position, but we definitely can do it as important decisions, or if any times we feel like a person especially is in the win category and they're not receiving input from all board members. So a great practical tip is if there is a really bold statement made and we know that we need to get some conversation going, the easiest thing to do is pick someone in the boardroom and then go clockwise, and you don't always start with the same person. And you just say, hey, let's go around and get everyone's thoughts. And then you just ask for thoughts. The opposite side on the win is that we want to test the theory and we want to help them be inquisitive. So we can ask some really good questions to get them to kind of test their theory. The folks on the minimum side, one of the things that I encourage you, if you fall in this category, is that you actually schedule thinking time. You actually put in your Outlook a 15 minutes or a half hour where you're just thinking about, if I had to take a position and vocalize on something, what would it be? And these are 3 great questions to ask. So for those, what am I seeing that others are missing? This is a great question if you tend to be in the minimum category. So this allows you to come up with something where you can take a position or make a comment about. On the opposite spectrum, if you are the person that's typically the dominant person and or speaks up a lot, is what do other people see that I am missing? And the beautiful question in boardrooms especially, but also in even team meetings, is what are we all missing about this especially important decisions? If you're ready to invest into a major new initiative, go into a new territory, any of these major decisions that we have that are really going to be impactful to our organization, that question is phenomenal, which is what are we all missing? The trick to this question is you need to give about 15 seconds of silence. In other words, give people the time to just think, what haven't we talked about? What are some biases in this room that maybe do need to be surfaced? So that's increasing conversational capacity. In boardrooms, this is a mistake that I see some board members make, and we actually lose some pretty good board members sometimes because of a misunderstanding in understanding this one voice. We also need to lean into board members that aren't showing up well if they are always feeling that they need to be in agreement. So I refer to this as the one voice theory. It's one of my favorite things in leadership. And I have seen if you can all have unity, remember that first slide, we need unity. We need to all be going down the same path together, but it doesn't mean we're always going to agree on things. And what's important as a board member is that we understand it is okay to be in the acceptance category, even if you disagree. And good boards occasionally have a no vote. They don't, I hear all the time, we have a yes board. Yeah, we have a yes board. In other words, you're not asking good questions and you're all just going down the path as if you agree, even though there may be something else that needs to be discussed. But what's critically important is after the discussion, when the meeting is adjourned, you are all going down one voice as you are either accepting it or agreeing to it. In other words, you're supporting it, and no one should know which of these aisles you're on. So I have helped boards, and I have reported to a board my whole career, a volunteer board of directors my whole career. So I have seen these times when a board member may have a little fear or anxiety about something. They approved it. They voted yes on the motion. But then after the meeting, they make a comment. So an example is, in my world, one time we changed the name of our organization. And it was a unanimous vote for the new name. But then a board member mentioned something to a staff person later. I'm still not really sure how I feel about that new name. And it caused this anxiety in 15 minutes that went through this branch about, are we all in unity or not? Does the board really like this name? Should I like this name or not? And so it's super important that as a board member, especially a board chair, that you make sure that your board members are in one of these 2 categories. And it is okay if they are in the acceptance category and you know they disagree, but they've done their due diligence. Even if they vote no, this is why we have a board, and this is why we either have unanimous or 2/3 vote or all those things we have in our bylaws. So it is often misunderstood, and people will actually leave teams because they don't agree with something management made, rather than get in the mindset, I just need to find a way to accept this. What do I need to support this when I walk out of this boardroom?
Hey, Connie, I'm going to jump in.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to jump in real quick because I think there's an important piece that we need to recognize is the preparation of the board member or not. If they have come into a board meeting and they are not prepared for these critical conversations, these important decisions, then it can often cause them to just default. And it is one of those things that then they read it afterwards and they're like, oh no, I don't agree with that. So I think we do need to call out the fact that if your board comes into the boardroom often unprepared, it's going to be hard to make really good decisions.
Yes. The other thing that happens, such a great point. The other thing that happens is executive directors and the team, the executive teams that attend board meetings, when board members ask additional questions, so they get comfortable to make a decision, the team gets defensive. And they'll be like, why are they asking that question? Don't they think we would have thought of that? Don't they think whatever? And so the other critical thing is that we create a brand as a team, as a staff, that when board members ask a question, they need more information to get comfortable. Oftentimes it's rooted in some fear, such as, oh, I'm a little risk averse. I'm just scared about what this might do. How can I get more comfortable? So one of the best questions executive directors can ask, and actually board chairs could ask this regularly too, that would be beneficial, is there any additional information you need to feel comfortable making this decision? Are you missing any information that you need to make this decision? And then when you know you're going to be revisiting or bringing up a topic at the next meeting, executive directors and board chairs can also ask, what would you like the team to bring, or what would you like to see at the next meeting to feel like you are equipped to make this decision? And sometimes that opens up an incredible dialogue, which is wonderful. Great point there.
Yeah, so Connie, I'm going to follow up because I think this is another key thing we see oftentimes when we're talking about the board and the CEO or executive director relationship, is that as your board is getting healthier and more effective, if your executive director is used to calling all the shots, then that board chair really needs to make sure that they're circling back with the executive director, especially if a decision was made where the executive director feels like they just have to accept it and they don't agree with it. So I do think that that's as you're creating more health in your board, recognize the signs for your ED.
Yes. The other thing is the executive directors often are the ones that are pulling the board packet together. They're gathering all the reports from people. They're making sure that they've got their standard report together. I really recommend that executive directors always ask the board chair, is there anything else that needs to be added to the agenda? Does the agenda look good to you? Because in the end, the board chair is responsible for what that agenda looks like going to the board meeting. And so it just empowers board chairs and reminds them about they are ultimately responsible for what this agenda looks like. Very good.
So kind of on that note, there's a question, what is the best way to prepare board members for making decisions in board meetings? And this, for me personally, I know sometimes I have just not had time to review things prior to a board meeting, and it's news to me as I scramble to jump on at the last minute. So I think that's a great question.
Yeah, so board orientation is a great tool, is to make sure you're going through on board orientation what the role of the board is and what the expectations are with time. And I'm a big believer that you should be as specific as you can about this. So for example, and you do this in the recruitment of board members, you say we have monthly meetings, they are roughly an hour and a half. Going through the board packet will require roughly an hour. Prior to the board meetings, you are expected to have gone through it before, and you talk about, and we do want you to serve on one committee that's going to be an hour a month, and we are going to be asking you to attend 3 events a year, and we are asking you to give or get this much money as part of a board member, whatever those are. It is so important that when we recruit board members that we are very clear what the expectation is. And then the board members are just responsible to make sure that they agree. I'm a huge believer in an annual board pledge, which lists, here's all of our agreements on what we need from you. Board members' lives change. Sometimes they take on a new job that all of a sudden is much more demanding than the last job when they agreed to be on the board. As just an example, sometimes we have health issues, sometimes all kinds of things happen. So what I would say is it's just important that you're always self-assessing, am I fulfilling the role that the board needs? And if you can't do that, it's better to step aside or let the board know, I need 2 months to do this. I won't be able to do this. I will be at least reviewing the packet. I will make sure I'm doing enough due diligence because I'm still a vote regardless. And so it is just important that you have really good open communication about what that is. And the best thing I can say is it is okay to self-assess regularly to make sure you're filling that role rather than just not filling the role because of your personal circumstances, because we all have things that happen in life that we need to tweak. And sometimes a board member, it's better maybe to have them move on to a committee instead at this stage in life or something going on. But it is great in the sense of we definitely, like I remember one time getting super frustrated with the board member that walked in at the last minute, and I could tell he hadn't, this was back when we had paper board packets, he hadn't opened the envelope, I could tell. And I remember immediately as the CEO thinking that I was up until midnight the night before preparing for this board meeting, and he hasn't even opened his packet. And so now I also remembered at the same time when I was thinking about what intention is going on here, he was selling his family business that week. I remembered a conversation before about that. So that's where he was in that space. And so give him a little grace with that. But we had some big things to vote on. He's still responsible to make sure that he's showing up with what that is and not drag the whole board down for another month to make that decision because he couldn't do that. So it all worked great. The board was able to catch him up on the most important pieces to it, and off we went. And this was a board member that typically was very engaged. So it isn't black and white, I guess is what I'm saying, but at least there is a commitment thing that we can stay focused on. And good conversation with the board chair is the best opportunity here when those things happen. I just love this quote because so often we throw things on an agenda and we don't have the discussion about here's what's been done so far, here's what still needs to be done, here's what we need from the board today, and here's the follow-up that's going to be happen, and here's how the decision is going to be made. This, David Span's one of my, he's a local leader here, and I just love his insight that he provides all the time. And it is so important that as executive directors and board chairs, you think about what is it that I need to make sure that everyone understands how this decision is going to be made, that we're not making a decision today. We're going to ask this of the team today. They're going to come back next month with this, and then we're expected to make a decision based on this. And what do you need to make a decision, as Blossom just referred to earlier. So the decision-making thing, sometimes this role between the CEO and executive director gets super fuzzy. In summary, what I will say is the staff need to understand they don't always get a vote. They won't get a vote on many, many things. My board, many boards that I've served on, there's been times when I wish I could get a vote. I wish I could, but that isn't the role of the executive director. So the important part is that the staff serve the role of educating and providing input for the board. And they need to proactively be ahead of what they think their board might need to make a decision. And simply taking a step back and getting out of your own world, if you're a staff person, and saying, if I was ultimately responsible for this decision going forward, what would I want to know? And this is when you can add some additional data, you can add some risk assessments, You can add some additional research that would make the decision better. And good executive directors are one step ahead of what they think their board might need to make good decisions. Board are the ones that have the vote. So they play a critical role in becoming educated, and they have an obligation to make sure they are educated to do the voting. So that question at the bottom I referred to earlier, right? Some of the best questions ever. What else do you need to feel adequately prepared to move forward with this decision? When a staff person asks that questions, they open up their world, that they are open to feedback, open to ideas, open to new ways of thinking. And it can really create some accountability and trust in the board. So some of you have seen this because I've worked with some of your boards and some of the things. And if you attended this session a year ago, you would have seen some of this. But it's probably by far, if there was anything you take away from today, it is understanding this concept of building trust and accountability in teams. So Eric Coriel, who I just very much admire, works a lot with how we elevate conversational capacity in the boardroom and how we build trust and accountability and keep everyone safe. So this is all based on this concept that we as humans are pack animals. Working as an individual is a myth. You can't take a board committee and have them work all independently and have it be successful. They need to be connected to the strategies and the vision of the board. And so being connected to a group is a requirement for human survival. All human fears fall in one of these 5 categories. So the first 2 are death and getting hurt, which hopefully we don't have to deal with those 2 in the boardroom. But the last 3, it's important to make sure that we understand when things are getting a little bit, anxiety's elevating, something's not feeling comfortable, that it's usually rooted in a fear. And so we need to understand these 3 levels of fear. The first one is this loss of autonomy. Some CEOs, for example, will try to be very controlling and paralyze the board, restrict them. There's also this humiliation and shame. When we have a board member that is doing something that isn't appropriate, the board chair needs to have a good way of handling that. We don't publicly shame people. And then the last one, and by the way, the same goes true with how we treat executive directors. If they have made a mistake, I am a big believer that you don't have like a firing team attack an executive director when there's been a mistake. It is a conversation often with the board chair and the CEO, sometimes executive committee or personnel committee, depending on your board. But it is important we don't shame them either in that. And then the last one is this whole of, I want to be respected. I want to provide value to this board. And the last thing I'm going to do is give silent treatment. We can't do that as board members, but we also can't give silent treatment and not be available for our executive directors if they need to bounce something off of a board. So we need to be available and respected there. So understanding those human fears, we're going to talk about the fear of separation because it is, and I'm sorry, these arrows are in the wrong place because of the formatting of what we're using. I should have checked this before. So that first arrow goes over by anxiety and the fear of separation and trust. So let me just, I'm not going to be able to do this. So, okay. So you're just going to imagine these 3 arrows are all shifted to the left a little. All right. The first way we deal with differences of opinion is we ignore it, we avoid it, and we do nothing. This is that quiet person earlier that I was talking about. And they don't say anything because they want to reduce their anxiety. And it increases the fear of separation and breaks down trust. Because what else do you know that you're not saying anything that could help our organization? And so it breaks down trust. So that's one way that we deal with conversations or ways of thinking when we have a difference of opinion. The second thing is we go talk behind their back. When we go and we get another board member and we have the parking lot discussion or the meeting before the meeting, all of these things happen. We do that because we don't want the anxiety to go have the one-on-one conversation. But it increases the fear of separation and breaks down trust because if you say that about them, what do you say about me behind my back? So that's the second way. And then the third one is we want the board, we want the board chair to deal with it directly when in fact we could actually go talk to and hold accountable another board member without the board chair having to be the bad guy or the deliverer of bad news. And so that's the third way. We want HR in our worlds to deal with it. We want our boss to deal with it. We want someone that is just a great listener that has good empathy to go deal with it on our behalf. And we do that because we don't want the anxiety to go have the one-on-one conversation, but it increases the fear of separation and breaks down trust. And so it's important to know that the things we do when there is a difference of opinion can kill trust and increase the fear of separation. When you have an increased fear of separation, you have high board turnover. So it is very difficult to retain board members when you have some of these activities going on. Unfortunately, 90% of differences of opinion are handled this way. And we wonder why we have high turnover and disengaged boards. So what we want to do is get super good at this one-on-one conversation. We have to understand when I go have a one-on-one conversation with a board member, I am going to have increased anxiety. And in this case, the fear of separation and the breakdown of trust depends on the receiver of the information. So if I receive the information by thanking them for their input, I am going to have a decreased fear of separation and increase in trust. And so it is important to know that we have to create a brand, especially as board chair and executive directors, where we receive feedback. We can't get defensive right away. We can't take things personally. We have to create a brand where we welcome input. The more you welcome input, the more valuable input you will receive. And then the last one is that we increase our group conversation. And this happens in the boardroom. When we can talk about real issues in the boardroom, it's pretty powerful how that happens. And you will trust each other more. And this fear of separation goes down. When you can go through a difficult conversation, it's pretty powerful in the boardroom. So the important part here is to look at the word anxiety. And I equate anxiety, by the way, to courage. Is that we reduce our courage when we do one of the first three. We aren't showing up with strong courage. The way you get courageous is to have one-on-one conversations and group conversations. So I'm a big believer that you all agree as a board, you bring real issues to the boardroom. And the more you can get good at this, the better you will build the trust. And it keeps everyone safe, even if it requires a courageous conversation. And I just worked with the board last week that was phenomenal. We had a board retreat, and at the end of it, that we went around the room and everyone shared their ahas. And what they said was powerful, which was one of them actually claimed it. We have some board members that aren't here today that I'm concerned, how do we move forward as a board without them being here today? That was a very courageous conversation. So there's a few tips that I'm going to give you. These are the practical tips if you want to create a culture that is building trust and accountability with each other. The first one is you all agree you're not going to allow people to hide behind a question when really they're making a statement. The quiet people do this. The ones that don't have the courage to lean in and make a claim, take a position, will tend to hide behind questions. So here's an ineffective question. Should we change our board packet process to allow more time for us to review the detail? Okay, it's a question where it's rooted in a statement. So what we do is we teach people to reframe their questions in a statement form based on what they know at that point in time. And here's where the accountability piece comes in. Now you have to own, why did you ask that question? So a really good reframing of the statement, and we have to help people with this, by the way, is you can make a statement that says something to the effect of, I would find it beneficial to receive the board packets 2 days earlier in order to have sufficient time to review the packet. So you're owning this thing that you have that is a courageous conversation. And if you can start getting good at this, I did this great with boards and with team members. Executive teams doing this elevates your team like nothing else. You just get better at reframing based on what you know. What is the statement you're trying to make? It is such a more efficient conversation as well. We spend so much time trying to figure out where they're coming from and how everyone feels. But if you can nail it in the statement, now you have good stuff to work with. Now you can go around and ask everyone their input on a particular topic. So it is the tip number one I will give you. It works incredibly well. You all commit to this and be playful with it, because you'd be amazed how many times when you're listening to this, people cue a question out because it's safe, because they don't have to own it. The second thing is that we make people be very clear about who everyone and they is, because we all hide behind this. All the board members feel this way, all the employees, all our volunteers, all our donors. Who specifically? So when we're bringing real issues to the table, it's usually because someone has mentioned it or we feel a certain way about it. Oftentimes we will hide behind the we and everyone and they, because it's easy. We don't have to say, I feel this way. So when you get good about building credibility and trust with each other, you go around the room and you say, which board members? So the piece in this board I worked with last week, they were just getting this training and they were getting brave. The next conversation I coach them with is at their next board meeting. They need to go around the room and talk about who is not courageously showing up. Again, the anxiety is going to be high, but when you have that conversation, the trust with the group is pretty amazing how it happens. When it flares up and it doesn't work well, it's almost always because a board member has a personal agenda, and or I guess they could be extremely defensive or maybe narcissistic. But almost always when I've practiced this with boards, it actually has incredible outcomes, which is we really got the real issue to the table, and that's conversational capacity. And then the third one is that we don't hide behind board-wide emails or company-wide emails or make HR send a company-wide. If we've got someone that 2 of our board members that are consistently showing up late, we don't send the board reminder that, hey, we really want our meetings to start on time at 4 o'clock. Please do your best to get there. We go talk to the 2 people, because when we hide behind general emails, all the people that didn't need to see the email beef it up, and the 2 that we're talking about either get offended or don't get it. So it's important that we don't hide behind general emails. This is another way where people hide behind questions, kind of. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. And then the last one is that we agree to what's called the no pairing policy. And this is an agreement that all real issues are brought to the board meeting. So we don't pair off. We don't pair off and talk about a board member that's really struggling. We can have a discussion with the board chair and make sure that they're fully aware that we've got an issue with this. But the more we can go do the one-on-one conversation and not make how you feel about someone else's problem too, the better we are as an effective board. And then I'm a big believer, I had this relationship anytime I was a board chair with the executive director. And when I was CEO, I had 7 volunteer board members. I had this agreement always, which is that we will never have surprises between us. So if you hear something about anything that I am doing, how I approach something, how one of my team members is showing up or not showing up, please, let's make sure there's no surprises. And so if I saw a board member do something, immediately I'm letting my board chair know, and we're talking about it, and I'm helping her with how to have a conversation if she needs. So the no pairing is we all agree we're not going to pair off and talk about people, especially our other board members. Now, when no pairing is implemented, this is about when you're avoiding a conversation. It's not about brainstorming who is our best new person to be on the finance committee. That's not what I'm talking about. And the way you implement no pairing is the minute someone starts bringing someone else's name in, all you have to do is say, wait a minute, let's wait till we can get them in this discussion. You just mentioned John's name. Let's wait till we can get John's name and John in this discussion, because he probably has the most direct input. And what it will do when you establish this policy is it will create a culture where people will be like, no, I don't need to have a separate meeting. Let me just go talk to John directly. And it just naturally flows where people deal real issues one-on-one. So that's the fourth thing that we can do. So those are your 4 practical tips to create a culture of building accountability and trust and increasing conversational capacity in your boardroom.
Connie, I just want to say that we have 5 minutes left.
Excellent. Yep.
And there is a question in the chat. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Question?
Bryce, do you want to bring that forward?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say, so regarding like, the not behinding, like or not just you hiding behind the they and the we and all that. If there's a board member that brings up, an issue or a question in the board meeting, and that's coming from, staff that aren't in the meeting, if they're like bringing it on behalf of staff, is it appropriate to identify which staff they're talking about? Because those staff, aren't in the meeting to, defend themselves or to explain.
Absolutely. It's clarity. It is getting clarity, right? We just want to make sure we don't cross into that public humiliation and shame. But we're all in this for the good of the whole. So it is very appropriate to do that. And there's professional ways to do this, right? Which is, let's do this so we can all help each other type of thing.
Thank you.
The power of the word what. Anytime you want to ask a question, start it with what. It triggers the brain to start solving problems and not create defensiveness. So I just wanted to give you that tip. Anytime you can start when you're working with someone that has a complaint and you can ask them this question back, what can you do too? And then fill in the gap. It is so much better to get them to help go solve the problem themselves rather than us get all of this constant feedback. So the power of the what. You'll have this in your recording. These are just reasons why employees leave. And I love this because when we look at executive directors, the role of the board chair is to make sure the recruitment is in reason 1 and 2, but we need to make sure we oftentimes forget that we owe our executive director regular coaching sessions and annual performance review. We forget we need to recognize them. We forget that what we're asking them to do needs to be in balance with the work-life balance, all of these things. And the last one here, executive directors want to work with boards that trust each other. So these are great tools. My favorite for boards is the Little Book of Boards. It's an easy read. It's a fabulous. I have several boards that I have recruited and referred this book to that love it. So these are just some tools for you. Conversational capacity is a great one. And of course, Crucial Conversations is probably my all-time favorite. So just know that trust is built through difficult conversations and vulnerability. So we have to get really good about that in that piece. We need to make sure that we're doing that. Okay. And always keep the vision of what a successful board looks like. This was my team at Icon, and we all went camping and we just had a great time. And so I always say, where do you want to lead? And you want to be where there's fun and energy and everyone is exciting rather than this drama and stress and all of this. So it's worth investing in because you will be in that space. My favorite cartoon of all times, because all of us have our hands up all the time, a lot of ways of ideas and thinking. It's important you find the courage to stay in the conversation. So I don't encourage board members to leave boards just because there is some drama and things going on. I encourage them to try to change the culture. Then if it's not possible, then that's fine. But let's make sure we're finding the courage to stay in the conversation. And so I'll turn it over to Blossom for this. Let me go through your list really quick because there is a few things that we'll want to either capture in future things. So definitely we talked about board engagement a little bit. There's a whole lot more about how to get them engaged. But if you start here, it's your best tip, because if you don't get this handled, it's hard to get them engaged at the next level. And then suggestions for communicating with board. I think we covered that a little. Know the CEO better and develop trust. That was a comment. Fundraising and all of that's another whole section. There is probably some good, Blossom could speak to this, some good prior NSLs labs that we could refer back to. And then I think for the CPA that's here is just it's important that there's always this open dialogue, and the way you could encourage them is to ask them, is your whole board aware of this? Are they involved in your finances? Do you have an effective finance committee? Things like that. So, okay. It's a pleasure sharing some of this with you today.
Well, and you can find all of our, all except one of our monthly workshops here on our YouTube channel at Idaho Partners for Good. Next month, I think is our next slide. Is that correct, Connie?
Yes.
Okay, so next month, Connie, questions. Let's stop and see if
Yeah.
there are any questions.
Blossom?
Yeah.
So you mentioned in the chat a couple minutes ago about sourcing for board members and stuff. I guess if I wanted to talk to you more about, potentially getting on a board, how do I go about that?
I've got you on my radar, Bryce, and I would love to get you engaged. Absolutely. Yeah. Here's my bias. We do a lot of work with nonprofits in our state, and oftentimes it comes down to the lack of effective leadership, whether it's on the ED side or the board side. And so that's why we're really dialing in on these two super important pieces of a nonprofit. So we have to get our directors dialed in, because oftentimes what happens is they are not trained. There is a lack of diverse perspectives in the boardroom. So there's a lot of just very homogeneous types of decisions that never really get them to their mission. So that's why we need trained board members. We do have consulting services. That's how we fund ourselves, is through our consulting services. So if you need leadership, business, governance development, we've got great consultants like Connie. We have other things like strategic planning, design thinking, project management, change management, and a lot of other services. So just keep us in mind if you're going to use a consultant. Next month, okay, board meetings you don't want to miss. I have been in on this one with Connie, and it's excellent. So please tell people you don't want to miss next month. And last but not least, I think there's one more slide. Okay. If you are interested in what we do, more of what we do, this is a great place to come next Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Come and learn about the 6-month leadership cohort journey. Liberty, are you still there?
I am.
You want to just pipe in on this real quick about just your experience?
Yeah, so we have been able to be a part of 2 of the cohort trainings and gotten just excellent training from different leaders that are in the Idaho Partners for Good, that has right now, kind of this spring, has really been helping us establish our community engagement department, which is doing marketing and communications and development. And we have learned so much through the coaching especially. Not only do they give you like 4-hour sessions of training, but then they really hone it in through follow-up coaching. So we've been really blessed by it. I'd love to see any and all of you guys on the 18th, where we're gonna be able to celebrate the work that's been done by nonprofits.
Awesome. Okay, well, come on out and join us, and we will end with this, that as you've heard, you can't have optimism without good relationships. Every email I sign off, it's greater good together, is because we really are better doing this kind of stuff together. And right now, you're probably the one on the tip of the spear that we want you to find the energy to say, hey, we got this, to the people that you're leading. We need you to be fostering an environment where there is a sense of camaraderie and teamwork. And please keep your eye on the prize, which is stronger, thriving families and communities in Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. What a great meeting.
Thank you.